vision of equity in education is to envision an equitable school communities free from racism and discrimination. We'd love to think that that doesn't need to be a vision and that's already what's happening, but unfortunately it's not. And then the mission of E4E's Equity in Education Group is to advocate for education, resources, and policy changes to ensure that students and educators have the skills necessary to create equitable, anti-racist, inclusive schools. This is very much based on the teach a man to fish. You know, it's like we want to make sure that our students and teachers and administrators are equipped with the tools to create the correct sort of education system that we want, but it's also up to the parent and the community to do this work and to support them. Our housing group, again, we'll let you hear from them directly. They're going to give a presentation as well. But for anyone that lives in Encinitas or North County, you know that no matter what your skin color is, no matter what, you know, it's like your status is, that housing is one of the largest issues that we have here in our backyard. I always state that myself, I can speak for my demographic, which is I am a 40-year-old renter in Encinitas that falls into this place where I would never qualify for low income. I'm incredibly grateful for that, but I will never be able to afford a $1.5 million house. And so how are we making sure that the true character of Encinitas, which is people like myself, my partners who's a firefighter, our coffee baristas are also having a ability to live in Encinitas. But then when we look at the demographics, and we have 0.8% Black population, we have about, I think it's 8% Latinx population. How are we creating avenues that people that haven't been able to afford and that would love to benefit from our school systems, from our coastline, also have access? And so our housing group will talk more about that. And where we all came together was public safety. It was the murder of George Floyd at the hand of a police officer or at the knee of a police officer. And so that is what brought us together. And Encinitas police and sheriffs aren't immune to having racist practices and policies. When we pulled data of who gets pulled over in Encinitas, our Black neighbors are 8 times more likely to get pulled over, even though, again, they only make up 0.8%. Encinitas is approximately 56,000 residents, which means we only have about 440 Black residents, yet they're being pulled over 8 times as much. And so this is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And again, we come back to housing and to all of the areas that things are interweaved, and that mental health leads to people being unhoused. And so how are we actually using our tax dollars? How are we using our resources to make sure that our public safety is working for everyone? When you look at crime statistics in Encinitas, it's largely theft, it's car break-ins, it's theft at places like Walmart or Target. Do these things need to be handled directly by sheriffs, or can we do better with campaigns around make sure you lock your doors? You know, it's like, how are we using our resources and how are we making sure that we're looking at public safety the same way we should be looking at healthcare, preventive? How are we making sure people have mental health resources? How do we make sure that people that are making phone calls are calling the right numbers, who to call instead of 911. 911 is not always the best to call. And we've seen this many, many times when people who suffer from mental health are actually victims of police brutality. And so that's our public safety is very much trying to educate and then figure out what is the best way to use funds in Encinitas to create a true public safety. Scholarship and mentorship was added on about in December of 2020. And we're incredibly proud to be able to say we awarded 9 graduating students in 2020 with a total of $24,000. And how our program is different is that we don't actually look at their scholarships don't have to go directly to school, because that's many of them receive grants, they're low income students, but then they get to school and they no longer have a laptop that was provided in high school, or they no longer have, you know, access to food outside of their food programs. And so we have our students, when they fill out their scholarship forms, say exactly what they believe they're going to need their funds for. And we make sure that they have mentors. Most of our students were part of either the AVID program, which is part of the Santa Guido Unified High School District, or they came from the Met in San Diego, where they're paired with a mentor they have the same teacher throughout freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. And so they're used to having a mentor that they can talk to, that they can go to. And we wanted to make sure that they weren't going off to college. Many of them, it's first generation, so they don't have family members to talk to about what happens when you go to college. And so all 9 were partnered with a mentor, as well as their scholarship funds. And so our goal is to actually stay with those 9 kids through all 4 years of college. And each year they can reapply for the funds that they realize they need, while also increasing our scholarship amount by $10,000 to bring in additional 4 or 5 kids a year. And lastly, but not the least, what I find to be the most inspiring is our youth group. So our youth group created their own vision and mission, and their work is also to focus on what's happening within their schools. These are our high school students, our middle school students who somehow in the midst of a pandemic, being back and forth from online to in school, have also led so incredibly within their school system. They have had held protests because they're not being heard by their school board about what, it's like being safe in their schools. The stories that we have heard from our Black females about, it's like attacks on their hair, attacks on their body, and nothing being handled. These are the things that the youth, unfortunately, are having to lead on. It is so inspiring, but it also breaks my heart that we have not been able to fix these issues and that they are still fighting the same issues that myself and many of you have been fighting for decades. So again, as I mentioned, our slogan, what we truly believe is the end of racism starts with hello. And, it is only by getting involved, by getting to meet and know our neighbors of color, whether they're here in our backyard or other communities, we truly believe that that's the solution. I'm gonna turn it over to others, but I will drop in the chat different ways that folks can get involved. I'll drop our website in there. I'll drop if people are interested in any of those working groups that I mentioned. Like I said, they typically meet once a week and are talking together to figure out solutions to the problems that come up. And we would love to see any of you support us.
Thank you so much, Mally, for that wonderful overview, which is just absolutely impressive of what your organization is trying to accomplish and accomplishing. I would like to turn it over to one of my colleagues now, Patricia Khalifa Johnson, who will introduce our other speakers from Encinitas4Equality. So Patricia.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All righty. Liddell Fleming, housing co-lead, has deep roots in North County, having lived in Cardiff since 1972. Since he was the only Black person in every classroom from kindergarten through grade 12, he quickly learned to fit in by almost any means necessary, remaining quiet, even in the face of insensitive racial remarks. It took 52 years to find his voice, and he has committed himself to helping Black individuals, especially those living in predominantly white areas, call out injustices. Liddell wants Encinitas and its surrounding cities to be welcoming to Black-owned businesses and homeowners. With that, I want to welcome Mr. Liddell, and I wish you had been there when I was living in Encinitas. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, I want to meet that guy. That sounds so weird hearing people talk. That was amazing. Thank you. Hi, I'm Liddell Fleming, and in my uncorporate world, that's who I am. But when I put on my Superman tie, I become the real estate guy with the purple tie. And I want to first of all thank AAUW. I mean, kudos to you guys. 141 years, I had no idea. Since 1880, you guys have been at this and continuing. E3 is just over a year old. I hope that someday in our lifetimes that we will have no need for groups like this, because it'll just be gone, done, taken care of, and everyone will all get together and love each other like it should be. That said, I'm going to give you a little brief. I tell stories. So I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi. When I was 3 years old, my parents moved us from Jackson, Mississippi to Leucadia. Neptune, if you guys, those of you who know Leucadia well, Neptune is right on the coast, on the cliffs. I mean, talk about culture shock. And while they were there, I should probably go back a little further. My mother is Black. My father is white. Not my biological, but when I came out, he was there. He's always been there for me, and he's always going to be my father. And back then, they wouldn't allow them to get married. They didn't allow them in Mississippi to own a house together. So they had a house, but it was in my dad's name. When we moved from there, they literally gifted it to someone who they felt would not be able to afford a house someday. So we packed up, moved out here to California, and lived on Neptune for a short spell. One thing that I didn't find out until later is that my parents worked with the great Alice Walker at one of the first Head Start programs in the nation in Mississippi. And I can thank her as a child, Alice Walker that is, for never being able to own a BB gun, because she got her eye shot out by a BB gun. And I never knew until I was a grown up or later on that was the reason, and she was the person. So my parents have always been big patriots of freedom and equal rights. Very giving. They're currently both retired, but working full-time at CRC. They were voted as the #1 volunteers 4 years ago. And that was a huge, huge testament to just how giving they are and how much they give back to the community, which is, I guess, why I am how I am and who I am. So who am I? I am a realtor. I am a director with the North San Diego County Realtors. I'm also a director with the California Association of Realtors, of which we just had our fall meeting this past week, which was 8 hours a day of Zoom meetings, and then after meetings with caucuses and all that kind of stuff. But the main purpose of those positions is to do exactly what we're doing with E4E, and that is to help underprivileged people get into housing. We help write laws for the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors, where we actually help write laws for the nation. When I say we help write laws, we have staff that write these laws. We put them all together, and then they go lobby the politicians to get it done. One of the I'm also the key contact for the Assembly member, Tasha Berna Horvath. Yay, Tasha. And I'm the federal political coordinator for Mike Levin, Congressman Levin. Both of those roles enrich me so much. I love both of them as human beings first, and what they're doing for our great nation and our state and locally as well. And it's challenging, but I do like it. And I'm kind of a lobbyist, if you will, when it comes to those guys. But, you know, I wanted to talk about fair housing and the Fair Housing Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is where it kind of began. And I know that you guys have been working on this kind of stuff for, like I said, many, many decades, and really appreciate that. But the Fair Housing Act of 1968 prohibited discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of houses based on race, religion, national origin, or sex. intended as a follow-up to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This bill was the subject of continuous debate in the Senate, but it was passed very quickly by the House of Representatives